All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the longest running show in the world about data. It's called DM Radio. Yours truly, Eric Kavanagh, here, and I am so pleased to have an expert in our field on the call today from one of the biggest companies in this industry in the analytics business, Salesforce. They are a powerhouse and they have what's called AgentForce, which I think is about the coolest name I've come across for AI agents. We're going to talk about analytics. We're going to talk about how it's going to be woven into your workflows, which I think is brilliant. And we're going to talk about agents. What are they? How are they helping? What are they doing? And try to get into the weeds a little bit to determine what these things really are, how they work, and then hopefully we'll get around to that sticky issue of governance. How do we shepherd them? How do we manage their behavior? How do we monitor what they do? These are all the questions that popped into my mind. And Nate, I'll start you off with a fun comment. You know, at the beginning of last year, I interviewed a good friend of mine for the show, Dr. Usama Fayyad, who heads up the Northeastern University School, or it's the Institute for Experiential AI, is what they call it. And we were talking about large language models. We talked about something called interactive AI, which I said was going to be probably even more compelling for the business world than LLMs, than Gen AI. And then someone came up with the term agentic AI and AI agents, and it just took off. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what I was talking about. That's what I meant by interactive AI. It's a cool term. It makes a lot of sense. But he made this really funny comment that just cracked me up at the time. He said about the large language model, he said, they are too big. We don't know why they work. Nobody knows why they work. We don't know what's going on. I'm like, what? You head up this whole university institute and he's telling us we don't know what, they're just too big. And even Sam Altman came out and said, oh, the era of large language models is over like a year ago. And we're all like, what is this guy talking about? Aren't you the LLM guy? It's like, what? But I think that he saw some of what was coming, and we'll kind of dig into that throughout the course of the show. But a big part of AI is what analytics has always sought to deliver, which is identify patterns, understand what's happening in your business, be able to take action on that. So I'm so excited to have you in the mix here. Maybe just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do over there at Salesforce. Of course, Tableau, a Salesforce company, but tell us a bit about what gets you excited and where you see things going.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Eric. It's great to be here. So just real briefly, my PhD is in AI. My thesis was called machine generated content, just another term that we liked a lot at the time, but wasn't the one that got picked up on. It
Right.
was all around, it was natural language generation, we called it then. And so it was all work around how do we help computers explain things to people in a way that people can understand, and we can get things really personalized and really contextualized for an individual person. And so I was at a startup spun out of that technology called Narrative Science for almost 12 years. I built my whole career there, ended up as chief scientist, and then we got acquired by Tableau about a little over 3 years ago now. Obviously, Tableau was acquired by Salesforce. And at the time, we'd been trying to do this idea of natural language insights and getting insights more into the flow of work and really activating the people we call business users, the people that they want to be data informed, they want to be smart, they want to be good at their jobs, their bosses want them to be. But in practice, they haven't engaged with analytics as much as sort of anybody wants them to, and as much as a lot of the more technical people are. And that's what we were doing at the startup. And then Tableau acquired us, and a lot of our go to market was kind of picking on Tableau. And we're saying, hey, you don't want a bunch of dashboards. There's better things now with AI. And this was like, we were watching GPT-2 was out then, and we were doing a lot of internal experiments, but we were kind of doing everything pre LLM. So the technology wasn't really there yet, but we got acquired, and I didn't know how that was going to go because it felt like Tableau. You were talking about, Eric, you were there for the first public demo of Tableau, which was amazing 20 years ago, really sort of ushered in this era of analytics we've all been in for a long time. And I didn't know if they were going to be kind of stuck in that path. And then we got acquired, and it was like, oh, everybody here wants to go really quickly. We all really want to solve for business users. We want to help everybody in the organization get activated, be smarter, make better decisions from the data. And there was such a will when we came in, and 3 years ago, but it was still, the technology was kind of not there quite yet. And then obviously ChatGPT came out, blew up the whole transition to large language models. All of a sudden scaled in a way that they hadn't before, and were now really useful. And there's still the challenges of hallucinations and stuff we'll get into. They're not obviously panaceas, they're not silver bullets, but all of a sudden there's this amazing technology that allows us to really drive to deliver on this vision that Tableau and Salesforce have wanted for a while, which is moving beyond, hey, come into Tableau, find the right dashboard, click around, use your quantitative skills or your Tableau training you've had, figure out what's going on, and then go somewhere else to do something with it. That's
Right.
been kind
Right.
of the analytics workflow for a long time, and it's delivered big results. We've got a lot of happy customers that are renewing. Obviously, we don't have to convince anyone anymore that data and analytics is important to a business. Everybody knows that, but also
Right.
everybody knows that the paradigm we've been in for the last 20 years, it's really kind of hit its limits, and has been hitting its limits. And now the really exciting thing with AI, and in particular for us at Salesforce with AgentForce, which is our layer on top of those foundation models, all of a sudden we can really deliver on that promise, that we've been trying to for a long time, and our customers have been asking us for. And so I think we started to see some of that, with us last year with things like Pulse and Tableau Agent. But really, this is going to be the year where I think I see us almost like at the top of a roller coaster, and those kind
Mm.
of clicks are slowing, and this is going to be it. And I think it's going to be a big year for AI in general, but certainly for analytics, and certainly the work we're doing. It's going to be, I think, 12 months from now, the way people think about analytics and what an analytics org does, within the company, and sort of the value they deliver to the rest of the company. We're going to really shift that perspective over the next 12 months. So I'm super excited. I'm Like I said, I'm an old AI guy, and so in general, I'm jazzed about all the advances that are coming. I'm also concerned, in a lot of ways. But for me, the thing that is really exciting about the work we're doing here is trying to get that balance between, we want to build on the best foundation models. We want to be tracking, hey, R1's amazing. We want to be adopting that where we can, and being able to stay abreast on all of the innovations that are coming out of OpenAI and Anthropic and everybody else. But also, we're Tableau, we're Salesforce. Like, trust is our number one value. Our whole
Mm.
really value prop and business model is, hey, you can, and the biggest and best enterprises in the world can trust us with their business, with their data. And so trying to have both of those and sort of be able to deliver the best experiences, but also not sacrificing on security and trust and governance and all those things that are also really critical. That's what keeps me really engaged, is trying to do both of those at the same time and strike the right balance between those two things. It's an interesting problem. There's a lot of friends from grad school and stuff that are at startups, and they're going really fast, but they're trying to get tiny customers that aren't our customers. And there's
Right.
other people that are in very conservative industries, and it's all about being locked down and about the regulation, and trying to kind of be in between those two spaces, is really exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, you made a number of really good points there, and one that I think is very encouraging, and I completely agree with you on this, is that we've got to move analytics into the business, into the workflow. Is instead of having some separate environment where you go and play around with data and look at all that stuff, and then make some decision and turn around and go do something or call somebody. I mean, that's okay as far as it goes, but that's not in line. I mean, I like this comment or this term, inline analytics, where you're baking the analytics into the user interface, and AI, I think, is going to really help in that regard. And I believe that much of the value that we'll get from AI, including Gen AI, will come in the form of suggestions, of observations that the system has made about what's happening in your workflow at this moment, and suggestions about what to do, which you can then either take or not take. And in doing so, further train the model for your business. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Two things there. One, on the training thing, I totally agree. And that's another thing I'm really excited about being at Salesforce, is we own the whole. We're not just we don't just recommend something. Everybody can do, hey, we recommend it, and users click that first recommendation, and some little ML model in the back says, oh, that was a good recommendation, so I'll be more likely to recommend that next time. That's great. We should do that. Everybody should do that. We are doing that. But really importantly, we also, because we're not just the analytics piece, we're the entire Salesforce piece, where when you take that next recommended action, it's not just us saying, hey, you did it, so that must have been a good recommendation. It's the recommendation is something like, hey, you should offer this customer a discount, and they'll be more likely to renew. All of that, offering the discount, the renewal, that's all tracked in Sales Cloud. For us, it's stored in Data Cloud. So it's not just, hey, we offered a good recommendation and the user clicked it. It's, hey, we offered a good recommendation, the user clicked it, and then the customer bought it. So it's not just sort of training off the reaction, it's training off the actual outcome. And it's really
Attribution.
exciting that we have, yeah,
Right.
like all of a sudden we can start to attribute value to the analytics. And that's always been so hard. And there's so many, chief analytics officers, and really hard for them to quantify the value they're delivering to the organization. And all of a sudden, we're on the cusp of being able to do that much more quantitatively, much more accurately. We can start to like pass that down not just to the analytics org, but to the individual analysts as well. It's not just, hey, Susie created this dashboard that got looked at a lot. It's Susie gave the agent some additional piece of context, and that helped the agent make better recommendations, and those recommendations led to better business outcomes. Way to go, Susie the analyst. Like, that was your analytical work that drove tangible results for the business. And we can actually trace that through. So not only does, the analytics unit as a whole get the attribution, but individual people within that can start to also, to feel the love coming back to them. I'm really excited about one of the things we're obviously at Tableau. We're super lucky to have the data fam. It's the community that's built Tableau. It loves Tableau, has helped make Tableau the success it is today. And as we're thinking about how some of that analytical work and the work analyst is going to do will change, being able to make sure that they are still getting the credit for it, that it's still understood that they're the ones that are in charge. It's not the agent going off and doing an amazing job. It's the analysts mentoring the agent and coaching the agent, giving the agent the context it needs around the semantic data model and how the organization uses data and what different acronyms mean. And all of that kind of work is going to remain hugely critical. It's hugely critical for the analysts to do. And we want to make sure they get they get the benefit and the love and the good vibes that's going to drive.
Yeah, well, and people like to succeed. I mean, let's be honest. People like to contribute. They like to succeed. They like when someone recognizes that they've done something. And to your point, the fact that we can now capture not just that the recommendation was made and taken, but then follow that thread to see, oh, and a sale went through and they renewed and the customer sat went up. And even when it goes down, right? We understand when things don't work well, you're training the model with that as well. So it's like we want the agents to better understand what we're trying to get them to do. And in a lot of cases, the agents are doing tedious, boring work that people didn't want to do anyway and just did not do or did do and took a whole lot of time. And that stuff just wears down morale. One of my soapbox topics on the show is morale, because when morale is high in an organization, good things happen. When morale is low, good things don't happen as much. And you can have all the money, resources, technology in the world. If morale is low, bad results are going to follow. And what I love about this approach that you're taking here with these agents and training them and making them an integral part of business workflows is that you're greasing the tracks to success, and you're also able to identify and reward people when they do the right thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that I love your emphasis on morale, Eric. I feel that too, and I think one of the things to your point about inline analytics, we also call that like ambient analytics or everywhere analytics. There's kind of different terms for the similar concept. But the metaphor I have in my head is traditional BI and the way it's been running up until kind of last year sometime.
Right.
And so it's sort of like
That's
it's sort of
funny.
like back when we had like a village well, and there's a bunch of people that live in the town. Of course, everybody needs water for cooking and cleaning, and there's one place in town where you get the water, and it's the schlep to get there, right? And so there's a lot of people in the morning. Probably one of the parents' job to do is grab the two empty buckets of water, walk a mile to the well. Everybody else is getting their water, dip the water in, come back home, which means it's an explicit part of your day. You got to account for it every morning. And when it's going to take me a half hour to go get the water for the day, it's a schlep and unpleasant, and you're going to be sloshing water. And when it's rainy, it's going to be miserable, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's somewhere
That's
else,
funny.
right? It's not. It's just a task. It's an explicit task you have to do. Oh, I have to go get water, and that's the mode analytics has been in. It's like, oh, like we're trying to make a decision. Oh, it'd be nice to know this piece of information. uh, we got somebody
Right.
that's going to have to go to the well, and like the leaders of the company or like the mayors of the town, they have people get the water for them. It's not CEOs aren't, and kings aren't walking to the well with everybody else. So for them, it's a pretty good experience. But for all the rest of us, it's a hassle. And so, like you said, people don't do it because it's a pain. If you don't do it, you feel like uncertainty and sort of anxiety about like what's out there, and you're going to get embarrassed in a meeting because you didn't know something. And there was
Right.
just a lot of, dirty, dirty people that smelled bad and weren't as clean as they could have been because it was such a pain to get the water. And then all of a sudden, indoor plumbing is invented, and it's like, wow, it's a huge transformation. All of a sudden, it's not an explicit part of your day to go get water, and you got to kind of conserve it, and you don't want people to use your water because you've only got your bucket for the day. You just turn it on and it's there, and you got to flush the toilet and it works. You're cooking, you fill up the pot, it's there, it works. When you come into a meeting, it's provided proactively, right? There's like glasses or bottles of water out on the table. And it's such a, and I was working on this metaphor and reading about like a little bit of the history of early indoor plumbing. And there's these anecdotes where people would have plumbing installed in their house and they would just fill up the bucket in the morning, and they would still have the bucket, and it's like, oh sweet, now I don't have to walk
Wow.
to the well. I'll just run it in the morning. And it's like, no, it's so much bigger than that, but it takes a little bit to feel the effects, but you don't have to do that anymore. And like,
Wow.
now water is just ambient. It's where we are, water in the flow of work or something. And I think that's going to be the shift too, which is going to mean a lot of people are going to be using analytical insights without hearing the word Tableau or hearing the word of anybody else in this space. It's not going to
Right.
be, what's my password? Let me go there and find the right dashboard. It's, I'm trying to make a decision, and there's a thing there in front of me that's helping me because it knows the decision I'm trying to make and it has the context and it can push that in front of me. Or I'm in Slack or Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, and we've got an ad hoc question come up, and I can just fire that off and get back an answer I can trust. And that's like it's such a different experience and different way of thinking about analytics. And that's what we're driving, and that's what you'll see from us this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's all extremely encouraging. And you hit on a major topic that we'll pick up in the next segment, which I've actually written about, which is the change in dynamics and just how you hold meetings and what you do in meetings. Because historically, a senior executive would have all the direct reports come in and get updates from people to find out what's happening and then try to decide what to do next. No, no, no. You walk in already knowing what's happening, so you can have much more of a sort of a workshop instead of just trying to determine, all right, what is actually happening? You said this, you said that, these don't align. All that stuff goes out the window when you have this ambient analytics, as you call it, when it's just part of the culture and people are drinking from the water fountain all the time, like constantly. And now, to your point, and we'll pick this up again after the break, with all the natural language processing that's capable, and this is an area of great expertise for you, you can have explanations from information systems that are extremely accurate that used to take days, hours, or sometimes it never even was understood what the heck was going on in there. You can find out right now, but to your point, you have to change your mindset. You have to realize, no, this is now running water in the organization. You don't have to fill up the buckets anymore, folks. We're in a new
Yeah,
day,
exactly.
and that's a big, big deal. But folks, don't touch that. I'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio, yours truly, Eric Kavanagh, with Nate Nichols of Salesforce from the Tableau Narrative Science. I remember learning about the acquisition. I was like, oh, okay, Tableau is getting very clever. Mark Benioff, I mean, hats off to this guy. He has built an absolute juggernaut. And actually, I'll throw a concept at you and get your thoughts on this. You know, when you think about the fast changing dynamic of AI, and DeepSeek, of course, just sent the world in a tizzy. We're going to talk about that tomorrow on a show, as a matter of fact. I think it's a little bit overblown, all the concern about it. I think it's a good sign that they've done something where they've expedited the process. I mean, you want to be faster, leaner, cheaper, all that kind of stuff. Those are general dynamics. But I have this theory about success in this new AI driven world. And the theory is that centers of gravity will be of crucial importance. And what I mean by that is Salesforce as a center of gravity. You've got the sales data, the customer data. You've got all this information about what led up to sales. Sales, without sales, no business can survive, right? I mean, it's like the most important part of a business is the sales. And then, of course, you've got all these technologies woven around that. But the point is that Salesforce is a center of gravity. And I think that these centers of gravity are going to be very, very compelling in terms of where people go to get their information. And to your point about agents and ambient analytics, you want all that to be woven through where they already are. You don't want to have to do the swivel chair thing, going to this app, that app. Nobody likes that. People want to be in one place, focus on the work, get their stuff done. So I think the fact that Salesforce has this real gravitas, this business center of gravity, is going to be very, very powerful going forward for adoption, because people who want to use AI, they don't want to have to load some different app somewhere and do all this different stuff. They want to just have it in their environment and use it. And I think that's going to be a real benefit for Salesforce going forward. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, totally. There was when we came in was pretty soon when I was acquired, or I wasn't acquired, when my company was acquired 3 years ago. That was pretty soon after the Tableau acquisition. And coming in, I heard a lot of there was some hand wringing, I would say, from the Tableau community about, is Salesforce being acquired and we're going to lose the Tableau magic? And hopefully we've, established that we are still Tableau. Still having sales, working with Salesforce and being part of Salesforce is like all tailwinds for us. Things like AgentForce, Data Cloud. Um, but there was a concern that we were going to kind of lose some of that magic. And at the time I was like, oh, I don't, I kind of don't know one way or the other. But as things have evolved and as technology has evolved over the last couple of years, I've come to the exact same conclusion that you have, that it would be very hard to be an independent analytics company now. And I think it would be even hard to be an independent, like we're just marketing, or we're just purely CRM, or we're just customer success, because part of what we're hearing from customers and finding is that a lot of the value in analytics in particular is really connecting the dots between all those different functions. So it's not just what is your sales data doing, it's how is your marketing data and the campaigns you're running there, how are those converting into sales and closed
Hmm.
opportunities? And then once you've landed a customer, what is your service data saying about whether they're likely to renew, problems they're having, things you've been doing on customer success.
Right.
And so having that whole view, plus what their customers are doing with the consumer stuff, having like that view across the entire org unlocks a lot of the value in data. And we talk about this. Everybody talks. You don't want siloed data,
Right.
and that's everybody's known that for a long time. Everybody's known that you want to bring your data together and harmonize it into some kind of data lakehouse, data warehouse. There's a lot of different architectures there. Obviously, we're big fans of data cloud. But things like you want to have the data well cataloged and well modeled, and have your columns have good names, and these kinds of things, we've been saying them for a while. They've been analytical best practices for a while, but you've always been sort of they've been kind of like nice to haves, right? Because it'd be good to have all your data catalog, but in practice you've got a bunch of analysts that have been there for a long time, and they know where the missing stairs are, and they kind of know how to get things done, and you can
That's funny.
you can paper over it with like people and the context that they have, and that's been fine because the people were the only ones to do the work. Now, as AI is advanced and we're looking at things like AgentForce and agents in general, I do love the term interactive AI. But as we're looking at agents, all of a sudden there's tons of value in making that knowledge explicit and having that written down in a system of record where, one, it's great for all the reasons it's always been great. You can have a single source of truth, and you can get your organization to align around how you calculate revenue and what does CSAT actually mean. And if a customer churns within the last 6 months, does their CSAT score still contribute to the average CSAT score of the week? And there's all these kinds of nuances that it's good to have everybody aligned around, and things like a semantic layer. But now the agent can see all of that. And so there's huge value unlocked of
Right.
getting that kind of softer stuff of like how the business actually uses data, getting that out of people's heads, getting it written down so everybody can agree on it, but then the agent can consume all of that as well. And so now
Mm.
there's a lot more benefit from that. And so some of those things that have been, historically kind of nice to haves, and things that'll be a goal for next year. We're going to finally get our data house in order. This is the year where you will unlock huge value from getting your data house in order. And so all of a sudden these become need to haves, because that's how you unlock agents on top of that, which is how you unlock huge amounts of scalability and this idea of, everywhere analytics that we've been talking about. To get to that, you need to get more of your data house in order. And, we're building a lot of tools to help with that. There's different ways to do that and different approaches. But yeah, really having that whole, we talk a lot about the customer 360, having that whole view consolidated, happening in software that we own, happening in Slack, where we have a lot of, sort of access and deep integration, and with our analytics layer sitting on top of it too. It's a really complete package that I think is just going to become, that kind of complete package offering is going to become more and more compelling to customers as AI continues advancing, and there continues to be like huge amounts of value you can unlock with it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And you brought up a number of really, really interesting points here. Number one, first and foremost, get your data house in order. I mean, this is of just incredible importance right now. A lot of efforts have just been, ignored or swept under the rug, or, all sorts of issues that people know exist have been out there. And of course, machine learning can help you with some of that. Machine learning can go through. This is what I love. It works all night. It doesn't, it doesn't take coffee breaks. It just plows through information systems, and we're getting much better at being able to scan whole environments and give really good intel on what's out there. I mean, you saw some of this with the data catalogs when they started doing things of this nature. So all this kind of comes together. Semantic layers, for example, taxonomies, ontologies, all these things are now really possible and can be used to great effect. So it's not that they're new ideas. We've had these ideas years ago. It's just that there wasn't the compute power, there wasn't the data, there wasn't the architecture. A lot of things were missing that are now not missing. So getting data houses in order is very powerful. But when you think about these agents, I think it's good that we have these terms co-pilot because it implies that you're still the pilot, but you have a co-pilot who's there helping you find things. And goodness gracious, think like in a customer service use case, for example, someone's on the phone in a call center, an angry customer calls in, turns out it's a high profile customer. We want to keep this person. An agent there by your side, listening in, doing real time transcription can then go, "Ooh, offer this, offer that. They bought this last time, it worked, etc." All that stuff. There's no way that a human would be able to go and review all this information and find that stuff. It's just not going to happen. So when the machine can do that job, let the machine do the job. And you're talking orders of magnitude improvement, it seems to me, in the efficacy of individual calls because you're intelligently using this co-pilot. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a similar, we're taking similar approaches with things like helping you get your data house in order, where it used to be, boy, you connect it to a new database table, there's 100 columns, like here's a normal CRUD interface for going into each one of those and giving it a name. And like we've had that, technology for a while, a lot of people have, and it sucks. Nobody wants to do that work. It's dull. It's the easiest thing in the world to get distracted from.
That's
But to your
funny.
point earlier about like making really good suggestions, we're doing stuff, other people are doing stuff. It's like it'll take a first pass at every one of those columns for you. And of course, with the approach we're taking, it's just the first pass. The humans are going to be in
Right.
control. They're the ones
Right.
that have their job on the line. They're the ones that are actually accountable for the data. But man, we can be helpful in doing that, and, doing descriptions of the columns, recommending how it might relate to these other data tables. Here's
Yeah.
some metrics and bigger semantic objects. Here's a list of synonyms that people might use. Are this as good lists or not? Like,
Right.
and all of a sudden it becomes there's this phrase I like a lot that's like it's much easier to mark with a red pen than a black one. And it's like when you see
Funny.
something and it's wrong, it's really easy to get out your red pen and be like, nope, that's wrong, change this to that. It's hard to just get out a blank sheet of paper and start writing. And so what we
Right.
want to do is as much as possible, and particularly in this kind of lower value work where it's kind of it's not the part. Analysts don't go to school because they want to update a data catalog. They go to school because they love data, they love exploring it, they love working with business people to uncover insights. They're going to keep doing that for like the harder, more strategic analytical challenges. People are going to be the best at that for a long time, and we're giving them awesome tools for that. For the rest of their job, a lot of it feels very low value to them. And those are places where we want to let them work with the red pen and say, here's the 10 things we found, X out one, add another. This thing that now became a morning task that you were dreading is a 15-minute task. And that's like, and now it benefits the agent as well. And we know that you did the work. And so we can track that again back to the attribution.
Right.
All of a sudden that becomes a lot more, just a lot more pleasant and shorter and more productive use of really well trained smart people's time.
Yeah, that's such an excellent point. And when you realize what these engines are very good at and can leverage them, it optimizes what you do with your time. Now you can get to the nut much faster. It's almost like they're cracking the nut open and serving you the actual nut so you can just eat it and don't have to worry about cracking the nut manually all the time. I mean, this is what we've done in manufacturing for years and years and years. It's what we've done in consumer packaged goods and all these places. You figure out an optimal workflow to expedite the process of getting to the nut, right?
Yeah.
And that's what analytics is all about. It's about finding something that matters. And it's, the other really interesting side of this equation is that you can use these agents again to sort of go do a whole bunch of dirty work that would have taken you 2 hours or 3 hours, would have been very unpleasant to do. You probably would have forgotten something, and then you have the information you want to make your decision. And that's the other thing that I've noticed about like when I'll use Gen AI to get an overview of some topic even though I'll know most things, I'll realize I forgot two or three things because there's only so much power your brain has, and
Yeah.
we're constantly being distracted by things. So they're good again as a co-pilot to remind you of all the different things that are possible. And then when you have that, I mean, it's almost like your phone when you could just say call mom or call dad, like like Seinfeld episodes with the speed dial always crack me up, right? Like, oh, I'm number 3 on the
Yeah.
speed dial now, like that kind of thing. You do forget some stuff, but you can always lean on it to go remind yourself. And it's also especially very good with complex processes, workflows. If you're new to a company, the onboarding process is going to be a whole heck of a lot easier if you can just sit there and ask questions of the system, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, not to over-index on DeepSeek and the R1 release, but that kind of, hey, it's a 50th of the cost. And that we've seen similar things from OpenAI and Anthropic, where every once in a while it's like, oh, hey, everything is 10 times cheap, it's a tenth of the cost that it was before. And also we updated the model, and like just the cost curve on AI is so is changing so quickly and getting cheaper so much quickly, and
Right.
getting cheaper so quickly that it opens up all these other possibilities of, like, hey, if you're a human wondering what's going on with a particular customer segment, you can probably think of a couple hypotheses, and maybe have an analyst you can have them look at that to kind of test those hypotheses, and you can kind of think of a handful, and you can test out a handful, and and if it's not one of those, it's like, I don't know what's going on. As AI gets cheaper and cheaper, it can come up with 50 hypotheses, 100 hypotheses, and just
Right.
run them all, right? And it's
Right.
like, right now that would cost a
That's
lot.
funny.
In 2 years, it's not. And having a reasoning agent that takes an hour to go off and it does 10,000 queries because it's working through a really hard problem, all that's going to become like very feasible very quickly. And so a lot of these things where it starts, that we have kind of intuitions about what it might be, and we try out those intuitions. Like, here's a thing that has other intuitions, but also the time and the performance to kind of run them all down. Like,
Right.
that's a very different world, and be able to pull back insights that you didn't even think to know to ask about, and can only be
Well,
discovered through a bunch of offline processing is coming.
That's such a good point, and we should dive into that in the next segment. But I wanted to throw something else out that I'm just picking up on talking to you. And I've thought about this before, but you're really crystallizing it in my mind. When you think about Salesforce and the fact that you have this absolutely massive amount of unstructured data stored in all these tables and all these files everywhere of customer interactions, of salesperson interactions, all these different things that have happened. Well, that stuff doesn't fit into a data warehouse, right? This is not going to fit into a traditional relational model where you can run, statistics on it. This is unstructured data. So, and of course, one of the weaknesses of the Gen AI models is that because they they basically transform text into vectors and then back into text. It's a bit of a lossy process, so you have to watch out for where there are loose ends and where it misses things or it hallucinates. I mean, they're getting better and better at that. But my point is that with these engines sitting on top of this treasure trove, this center of gravity, which is all of your unstructured data about all these interactions, you can learn outrageous amounts of really cool techniques, terms that are effective, processes, who did well, why did they do well, and you can just sit there and ask these machines to tell you. And again, they won't always be right, but as long as you're using it in a sort of decision support context, it can be extremely valuable, not just for executives, but for directors, for managers, for frontline workers. You can, depending upon what you expose to your staff, and I would say by and large, expose as much as you can responsibly expose. Everyone can learn almost all kinds of stuff. And one of the, I think the big challenges in the corporate world is the tension between departments like sales versus marketing, accounting versus, everyone or whatever. But now you can learn about other people's jobs too. And when you do that, there's empathy, and empathy greases the tracks and creates a much happier work environment. But don't touch that dial, folks. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio, a fascinating conversation with Nate Nichols, formerly Narrative Science, then got acquired by Tableau, now, of course, is part of the Salesforce juggernaut. And we're talking about ambient analytics, the changing dynamics of work. I mean, things are changing fast, folks. Luckily, they're changing in mostly good ways. A lot of the tedious work is going away, and the AI agents are going to do a lot of that. And I wanted to ask you a couple questions to get into the weeds a little bit about AI agents from a Salesforce perspective. Right now, when I look at the marketplace, I think Salesforce is in the lead. There are lots of companies nipping at your heels. Obviously, lots of folks are working on that. A lot of really cool stuff happening in small companies that I've talked to who are taking an agent first approach, for example, to software development, to testing. I mean, testing. Who can raise your hand if you enjoy doing software testing? Nobody enjoys doing software testing that I know of. Maybe there's someone out there who does, but it's not a very fun thing to do. So anytime you can automate that kind of stuff, you're really helping yourself out. But tell us a bit about the agent architecture. Like, how do you define an AI agent in the Salesforce world, and what kinds of things do you typically train it to do?
Yeah, so Salesforce big piece of technology there is called AgentForce. We released version one, I think, in September of this year, and we just released version two. It's the highest priority for the company. It's really all we hear about every day is AgentForce and how important that is. Because I think we were talking about Mark Benioff earlier, Eric. I think he correctly, and everybody from him down recognizes that this is really a just a huge transformation in how companies work, and I think going to be the biggest transition on this that I see in my lifetime, and I think for a lot of us. And so for us, like you mentioned, there's a lot of people doing agents, and there's a pretty at the highest level, there's a pretty well understood architecture for agents where you have an agent that can reason, which basically means it talks to itself about what it's going to do. And you can, if you have OpenAI, you can try out their O1 model, DeepSeek again. There's a lot of models that are doing this kind of planning reasoning. So you've got an agent or you've got a piece of AI that can make plans and can reason about what it's going to do. And then really importantly, you give it skills, which are sort of the tools it has access to actually implement the plan and to realize the plan. And so the approach we're taking at Salesforce is we're really investing in what is that piece of AI, how well can it reason. Some of that we're drafting off of, again, all the work that's happening in foundational models. We've also got a thing called the Atlas Reasoning Engine. We've got a lot of IP and investment and technology we're building on top of that to really expand that. And then what we're doing, both at Tableau, but really all across Salesforce, are building these different skills, different things the agent can do. And so for us, it's things like it can generate visualizations. It can answer questions about the data. It can generate dashboards. It can help you do some of the data modeling we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
It can listen to you when you tell it what you care about, and then it will autonomously watch that in the background and let you know
Wow.
when reach out to you proactively, which is something we're really excited about. So we're doing that kind of stuff. Sales Cloud is doing stuff like it can call a customer, it can generate an outreach email, it can talk to your sales team and help them with their coaching. You mentioned the service case earlier. We've got service agents that can answer calls, that can recommend, products the customer is most likely to buy. So we're building all these different skills. Of course, we're Salesforce, so we're a platform, and customers can build their own skills. And we've got a lot of tooling and support. It turns out you need UIs and you need test benches and you need to be able to tune all of that. There's like a lot of work that goes into building skills effectively. And then when you come in and you're interacting with the agent, it's listening to your request, it's building a plan, it's looking across all the different skills it has access to, and then it's executing that. It'll tell you what it's going to do. To your point of sort of it's going to do things on your behalf, but it'll obviously let you know those things it's going to do. It'll stop and check for permission before it's not going to just send a customer a discount because it thinks it's a great idea. It'll keep a
Right.
human in the loop in those processes. But and for us, so part of it is like what can so we're building analytics agents. What can they do for people? And we're doing things like you can open up a Slack or Teams and DM the agent with a question, and it'll come back with an answer that you can trust and an explanation of where that answer came from and a visualization, and you can click through into the data, like all the kind of stuff you might think of as sort of serving like core analytical use cases. But something that's also really important with agent and a big part of our strategy is the skills that we're building and the analytical capabilities that we're doing that are exposed to the agent are great both for someone coming in, trying to interact with analysis and coming in with an analytical question, but just as importantly, we're sort of effectively serving as the analyst for all of the other agents. And so what that means is as companies become more and more agentic, this idea of digital labor, I saw a study from Accenture last week actually that they predicted that by 2030, just 5 years away, agents will be the primary users of enterprise software, not people.
That's crazy. That's
Right.
wild.
It's like 7 years after ChatGPT, AI is the primary user of software, which is huge. It's a huge deal. I've got like little kids at home, and I'm like, what is your world going to be like, guys? But in that world, it's incredibly important that all those agents are also analytically driven and they've got the access to the same insights that your people are doing. So when a sales agent is emailing a customer trying to close a deal, it can use a bunch of analytical insights in that email and talk about how customers like you experienced a 14% increase in productivity when they adopted our software. Therefore, I think you'll like it too. And like you want that to be based on the same data model that your people are using, the same governance rules, the same guardrails. You want that all to be the same. So we're really, it sounds almost kind of sci-fi, but when we think about our users now, we've got human users that we've always had, and there's sort of analysts and the more kind of data people, and there's the business users. But just as important, and like maybe even more important over the next coming years, is we've got agents that are using our software, and they're
Right.
they're coming in with questions, and which is wild, but is also real and is a key part of our strategy. And so it's kind of a, I don't know, it kind of blows me away when I think about it sometimes, but it's also real and very sensible in what we're doing.
Well, it's wild. And, we've had bots, of course. I mean, there are web crawling bots everywhere on websites pinging things, and so they're not AI agents by any means. And I sometimes think of an AI agent as a semi-autonomous mini app that has reasoning capabilities, and it's like there are layers of thought, right? So it's like, should I do something? Someone's calling me, okay, what should I do? And then there's a second layer that kind of kicks on it. Okay, so what are the possibilities in this world? Third layer, okay, what are now? What are my actions are going to take? So it's much more of a complex entity. And to your point, it can do lots of different things. The key is going to be governance. And I think we got a couple minutes left in this segment. Can you walk through shepherding? Like, and I think that, we already have a model for this. It's called declarative programming. You say, I want this objective done, and then the system will kind of figure out how to do that. I've never fully wrapped my head around how some of that stuff works, but it's fascinating. But AI
Yeah.
agents are kind of like that, right? You tell it, look, I want to get this job done. Here's some guidelines to keep in mind. Go figure it out, and it'll just go like you say, so trying different options, thinking through things. Maybe the best way is to send an email. Maybe the best way is to analyze the data first and send a prompt back. But they can. The point is they can reason and they can make different decisions in a dynamic way, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the I like the way you frame that because it lines up with some of how I distinguish like agents from earlier Gen AI stuff. And obviously it's like this has all happened in like 36 months, it's all very
Right.
super compressed. But for a long time, for like 18 months there, it was like, hey, there's a little thing, and you can, like a natural language to SQL was like a thing for 6 months. And it's a little box, and you type in a query in natural language, and then it spits out the SQL, and then you can paste that into whatever your SQL console somewhere. And it's kind of a miracle that that works so well. But that is very like, that's very, it completed a task. And a lot of the early Copilot was like, give it a task and it will complete it synchronously and give you an answer back. And then you take that answer and go do something with it. The agents are much more oriented around give it an outcome that you want, and they will figure out how to meet that. And, there's lots of places where that doesn't work well today. You can see it kind of stumbles, but all of the arc of investment of, the tens and hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent around the world to improve the foundation models and their reasoning and planning capabilities. That's a huge tailwind for us. We've got another one with all the investment AgentForce is making. And so you're going to see really rapid advancements there. And so the idea that you can give it a task of, here's my marketing budget, go get me a lot of inbound leads. That's like,
Right.
and figure it out is like a
Right.
thing that's coming, and it's
Right.
on, we're kind of on an escalator there now, I think. And like, that's not a feature we're releasing next month, but that's the path we're on, and we're kind of on the boat, right? And
I,
so
you know,
as these things keep happening, it'll keep accruing to our benefit, which accrues to our, obviously, our customers' benefit.
I'm glad that you pointed that out because the other epiphany I had not too long ago when I was thinking about this, I actually gave a keynote to one of these web seminars a couple months ago. And I said, you know what, in the future, you're going to have a handful of companies. Salesforce is going to be one, Amazon will be one. The big guys will do this, where you'll say, I want to start a retail company. And like you go, okay, what kind of retail do you want? I want to sell sweaters and winter gear. Okay. And you'll enter your credit card and they'll just give you suggestions. And then you'll say, yes, yes, no, yes, no, enter. And it'll just go out and start getting you leads and start placing ads and doing all that stuff for you in the background, which is crazy to think about being able to orchestrate that. But I promise you that is coming, folks. You're going to see it fairly soon. Don't touch that dial. I'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio, a fascinating conversation today with Nate Nichols of Tableau, a Salesforce company, formerly of Narrative Science. So, natural language processing, one of the most fascinating aspects of this revolution that we're seeing, Nate, is that you used to have to know how to speak computer to get the computer to do stuff like in SQL or COBOL or Java or JavaScript or whatever. And now you don't. Like now you can just speak in natural language and have the computer tell you all kinds of things. I think we're really on the forefront of a truly remarkable transformation. We used to talk about BI for the masses. This is something we talked about in 2002 when I was just early in this game of promoting business intelligence. And to your point earlier, now it's not just the people, it's the agents too that are going to be able to get this stuff. And I think this whole agent force thing is very, very clever. And I think it really is going to fundamentally change how business gets done. And, Jensen Huang had this comment where he said, in the near future, IT departments will be like HR departments for AI agents, which is like, oh my goodness, that's just
Yeah.
crazy. But you do need to monitor them. You do need to manage them. You do need a mechanism of, if one starts doing crazy stuff, you got to pull the string on that sucker and like get the kill switch, right? So governance is still important. Monitoring and managing is still important, and the people are still important. I don't think you're going to have a day when agents just do everything. You're going to want to have people at the control point, and that's actually what the Dr. Fayad told me at the Institute for Experiential AI. What they mean is human in the loop. You're always going to want a human in the loop, but that person can be extremely powerful. The 10x engineer, the 10x marketer, thanks to these agents, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that idea of keeping people in the loop is that's and what people are doing. So like when we're building an awesome analytics agent and we're really excited about it. And you can sort of think about it as being like, hey, it's gonna come in like a new analyst, right? Somebody new to your company that they've got training, they've got skills, they've got education, they're legit, but they don't know anything about how a particular customer how they interact with their data and what their data means to them and what acronyms mean and what matters most at the end of the quarter and what different products or roles people are in. And so being able to bring that information in and present that to the agent is really important and sort of in this governance space. Some of it is being able to look afterwards and say, but we're building a lot of tooling around how many questions did the agent answer and how often did it get a thumbs up or thumbs down and like that
Right,
kind of stuff so you can manage is
right.
really important. But also before it's answering questions, how can you coach it or almost we're still messing with the terms, but it's almost kind of like mentoring the agent. Like you're an analyst that's been delivering value for your org for 10 years. You know a lot of things that our agent does not. And we want you to help make that agent be great so that it can take on all the tasks that you don't want to do and you can do the good stuff. And so how do we help you give that context and information, that sort of coaching information? How do we help you give that to the agent so that it can really deliver a great job, not just as an abstract sort of general analytical agent, but one that really sings within your particular org. And I
Wow.
think that's a really important piece of the governance angle as well.
Yeah, and having the orchestrator agent also is extremely valuable. And you look at like what Mistral has done with this mixture of experts. I think that's the winning plan because you have this one agent that's sort of overseeing the others and to say, okay, you go now and you go do this and you go do that, and they can go do their just like you have it in traditional reporting environments. You have an executive who has a team who report to that
Yep.
person, and then they have people who report to them. It's that same kind of architecture, and I don't know how fast it's going to go, but I think it's going to go pretty fast when you start to think about all the things you can have these agents do for you. Grab this report, grab that report. I mean, the days people used to spend working on a dashboard, now you just give a command, give me a dashboard with this data. All right, now change it with that data. I mean, that is a massive change in workflow and how you spend your time. And so I think the humans are probably going to be the laggards here in just adopting these new ways. But to your point, I'll never forget, by the way, people would get indoor plumbing and just put it in a bucket. Like, no, guys, it
Yeah.
runs all the time now. You don't have to do that anymore. I mean, that
Yeah,
speaks
yeah.
to mindset change, right? Final thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And it's hard. Like I love the emphasis you've been putting, Eric, on morale and job satisfaction because that's what I want. That's what we want. And it's not, this isn't just, hey, it's not just, hey, here's the thing, like, isn't this amazing? We got this science experiment. It can do a lot of things that people can do. there's a lot of people that are frustrated at work, they're anxious at work, they're bored, they're disengaged at work. We can help with a lot of that, and the idea of being able to deliver is sort of take the pain off of both the analysts who are spend a lot of their time doing low value work or getting text messages from the CEO where they need a number before, in the next 30 seconds before this board meeting or whatever, both for them and for the business users who are walking around kind of crossing their fingers that there isn't going to be something bad in the data that they should have known about, but they didn't take the time to figure out, or they couldn't
Right.
find their password or whatever.
Right.
Being able to take that kind of mental load off of people is, I don't know, the liberal arts major in me is really excited about what we can actually do for the people in these roles.
That is such an excellent point, and it really again speaks to this process of enlightenment. And we are becoming enlightened now, and you can become enlightened. And the fear factor is real. I mean, people not raising their hands in meetings for fear of looking stupid or getting in trouble is a very, very serious thing in every organization, even in families, right? Because people are afraid, and like that's a cultural issue. Like you need to imbue your staff, if you will, with the psychological confidence to speak up and to ask questions and to say things. That's a cultural dynamic. And I think companies that have good cultures are the ones that succeed, and they continue to succeed because if you're afraid to speak up, that is no bueno
Yeah.
for the company or for the people, right? So anyway, I just fascinated by all this. And Nate, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks to the team over there at Tableau for making this happen. Hop online, learn more about these technologies, folks. Look up Nate Nichols on LinkedIn and send me an email if you want to be on the show. info@dmradio.biz. We're booking the rest of the year right now. Things are moving fast, folks. We'll talk to you next time. You've been listening to DM Radio.